Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't even know a women's team existed for Australia until I reckon I was about 15 years old, and I saw a game be televised on TV, and I was like, oh wow, the women have an Australian side, and then I felt really bad for not knowing that. But it was there wasn't much exposure back then, and that's obviously changing now. But yeah, it's obviously a career choice for a lot of young girls playing cricket now.
Oh, it was essentially a game that was silent to the vast majority of people. So whilst it's been played since, for Australian teams have been playing since 1934-35, it was somewhat out of the public's mind. So now I think we've changed that drastically, and I've seen that progress from basically invisible to very visible, and it's been amazing to watch, and I think we're in a great place.
And that's it. That's it. Nitschke bowls the ball that gives Australia victory. They win the World Cup.
Growing up watching the TV, all I ever saw was the men playing in their baggy greens or one-day cricket, and I guess being a female, I never thought that I could do the same thing. I thought that the pinnacle of my career would be club cricket with the boys, at 16, and then I'd potentially go and do something else.
I think most of us when we were younger, we wouldn't talk about playing in an all-girls team. I probably didn't, the only all-girls team that I kind of played in was state stuff. Everything school-based or club-based was mixed, and most of the time I was the only girl, so I actually really liked it being the only girl, and I kind of loved the bragging rights if I was getting any of the boys out, because no one liked getting out to the girl back then.
Often you'd have a season of international cricket, which would sometimes only be 3 games against New Zealand. If you were lucky enough to have an England tour, then that was obviously a lot more cricket. But nowadays, the international schedule and the domestic schedule is so much more full of great cricket. I think that's probably the major change. That's given people an opportunity to play more, train more, get paid, be on television. It's wonderful.
There were still people saying that I shouldn't be playing cricket, that's for sure. Playing with the boys, they seem to be okay with it until you're the one that hit them for a 4 or got them out, and then suddenly they weren't so keen on the women playing. There are obviously good and bad people in every team. Most of them are pretty good, but you cop the odd comment, and that's all right. Back then, I think it was just a less accepting environment, and these days, for me, first time ever going to England and seeing how well the men actually integrated with the women over there was a real eye-opener for me, that we actually had a long way to go back in Australia, and I think that's finally changing.
I hope that the T20 World Cup in Australia is a watershed moment for women's sport, not just in Australia but around the world, just to show that it can stand on its own 2 feet and really deliver a great product where it's entertaining and people want to be involved in it. So hopefully it's just the start of something really big.
When we started, we essentially had a blank piece of paper, and in our minds was always, how can we capitalise on this opportunity? How can we make this as big as it can possibly be? And also, how can we be a force to drive positive change? And we identified we have this moment in time, this incredible moment in 2020 where the stars aligned. Australia hosting the T20 World Cup in 2020, blessed with incredible venues, really knowledgeable, passionate fans who know their sport and love their sport. And we were determined to take the tournament as far and wide as possible. That's why we've played the women's as a standalone major event in its own right, and we've picked the biggest stage, the Melbourne Cricket Ground, the biggest cricket ground in the world, on Sunday the 8th of March, International Women's Day, to set a new benchmark, to break a world record for the highest attendance at a women's sporting event.
Whoever's playing in that final, to get to play in front of 90,000 people will be an unbelievable experience.
The final on International Women's Day sort of gives extra significance, I guess, to it, and allows it to be a really big event. It is a cricket game, but it's also an event about bringing people together and uniting, I guess, in trying to make sure that everyone feels comfortable in what they're doing, and ensuring that opportunities are there for both males and female, boys and girls coming through. So it's going to be a massive time in Australia, and hopefully we're a part of that.
The current record dates back 20 years to the 1999 FIFA Women's World Cup. That day, a crowd of 90,185 attended the final. We know that the MCG can hold more.
I'm going to go on a limb and say that if you're not here at the MCG on March 8th, 2020, watching the women's T20 finals, you're missing something incredibly special, because it's going to be a major turning point for women's sports, because we're going to bring all of the fans of cricket and women's sports together here to say, let's celebrate women, let's celebrate the game of cricket, let's celebrate the finals.
I can't imagine what it would be like to have every single one of these seats filled with cricket fans. I think it'd be wonderful. I think there'd definitely be tears, and I think for a lot of my past players that I stay in contact with, I think we'd all be extremely proud of the players and of the Australian public for turning out to support.
I think there's still a long way to go, but it's definitely starting to get the credit that it deserves. I think there's still a lot more media exposure we could get across all boards of sports, really, and it seems to only be the significant events that are kind of televised, but we're heading in the right direction, that's for sure. I think it's a really fine line between being grateful for what we have and also pushing for what we should have. But women's sport on a whole is starting to really get the respect. I think that's the biggest step forward, is getting people on board to women's sport in general, not anything in particular, any kind of sport, but just women's sport as a whole, recognising that women can play sport at a professional level.
Yeah, look, I think T20 cricket has been a critical part of the growth. That's led to more games on television. So the combination of T20 cricket and television has really been what's opened up the eyes of the Australian public, and it's really allowed the players to demonstrate what they can do in front of a lot more people.
Oh, if we make it, and it's not going to be easy, it's going to need everyone, and really change the conversation so that people aren't talking about the rise of women's sport, they're just talking about sport. They're just talking about cricket.
T20 World Cups are really exciting. They do exactly what they're supposed to do, and they bring in the crowds with huge scores on big grounds and things like that. I think the last T20 World Cup that we just had showed what kind of good cricket that all countries can play. And to come together and do that on a world stage in Australia would be awesome.
Yeah, look, I am living my dream. It's an unbelievable time to be a part of women's cricket, the way it's growing, and I guess the way that we're helping it grow as well. It's an extra motivator for us to stay involved and to ensure that, you know, we're doing the right things both on and off the field to show that all the young girls out there that they could do this too in you know 10 to 15 years time, and who knows where it's going to be then.
To see it full, it'll be not the end point of a journey, but somewhat of a significant milestone in the journey of the sport, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that come to life.